let everybody know that Dr. Steve Parker is on with us today, and he many years ago was a mentor to many of us coaching camps, just coaching in general, and we're happy to have him on with us today.
And there goes Solomon. Oh, he's back.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the For the Love of the Game Soccer video podcast. And this is episode number 2. But before we jump into episode number 2, I received numerous emails last week. Numerous emails. It could be 17, it could be 2, it could be 0. But everybody wants to know what's the beef between Solomon and Frankie. What's going on between you guys?
I noticed that as well. It's like I did everything I could to interrupt everything Solly said. I was like,
Yeah.
I didn't realize I did that, but I do that.
Well, there is no beef. I love you, man. There is no beef. It's just a different of opinions. But it's
okay. There were no messages anyways. I just wanted to try and stir up trouble. So.
I knew it. I knew it. Pot stirrer.
So the topic for episode 2 is the greatest men's soccer player ever. Now, before this, we have not discussed criteria amongst us. We have not discussed anything about what may make our choices, what they are between the four of us. And I want to let everybody know that Dr. Steve Parker is on with us today, and he many years ago was a mentor to many of us coaching camps, just coaching in general, and we're happy to have him on with us today.
Glad to be here.
He kept me sane at Southern Mississippi.
That's high on my list of career accomplishments.
I was actually, that was not a good period. But Steve made it a good period after all. It started out pretty bleak. And then there was light. There was Dr. Parker.
All right. So, Solomon, I guess I have to throw out one criteria for us. Okay.
Yes.
You can't pick yourself, Solly. Okay.
Well, I was. Well, wait.
No,
what if I had already picked you?
no.
Well,
It can't be any of us.
You can pick someone else. You just can't pick yourself.
Well, I think Johnny, you want me to start?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think it's very difficult to say who is the best player of all time. I think you have to ask yourself who made the most impact on the game.
Okay,
that's
not what we're asking.
opinion.
We're going to stop you right there, because we're asking the best player ever. That's a whole different topic. Who had the most influence on the game?
I know,
but the question is so vague that it's wide open for interpretation.
Okay,
because Solly and I both have.
But
I will allow that line. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I
appreciate
that. I think who made the most impact on the game? I would say 3 players, and it's different eras. Then you can disagree and agree with me at that stage. I think you have. I'll take it in order at that stage. Johan Cruyff, and then I would like to say George Best. And now in this era, I believe it's Messi. There is a lot of that's just my personal opinion, and I will try to explain why I think and how they impacted the game. That's just my personal
Frankie, do
opinion.
you want to jump here and go at Solly right away? Or you want to let Steve go?
Let's let Steve go.
Okay.
Since Steve hadn't had a chance to really say anything yet.
Go,
That's okay.
He's rethinking wanting
go
to
on,
say
Steve.
anything.
I thought Sally was the one among the three of you that would have some historical perspective. And I guess Best provides a little bit. And you just made me feel really old. But I did pick three players as well. And I respect your differentiation between best and impactful. For me, I've always struggled with going on the field, and it's like there's no way I'm going to be the best guy on the field. That I might not be the best guy on my team, so that's going to happen. So I tried to develop a mindset where I wanted to be the most important. So I go into the game and feel like at the end of the game, they can't tell the story of the game without including me. Hopefully positive as opposed to negative. So that, I want to be an important player. And in some ways, I tried to use that criteria. I also came up with three, starting from the bottom, quite honestly, only with this one. And I was a little surprised I added him, but I included Messi. I had heard about him, as was very typical as a U.S. soccer fan, long before I ever saw him. So you'd read stuff or hear stuff about Messi. And I was like, okay, let me see this guy. And I watched about 8 or 10 games in a row. And it was like every single game, he mattered. There was no disappearing. And even great strikers, it was like some games they just don't get the service. Some games they just don't get the touches. Every game I saw, Messi did whatever it took to get involved. And that was impressive. The other two I have to just put as, 1 and 1A. Beckenbauer and Zidane. And I felt like this is going to be a short podcast because I'm right. How can you argue with Beckenbauer or Zidane? And part of it is there isn't, kind of contradicts what I said about Messi. Winning counts. And those guys won. They put teams on their back and carried them to the very highest levels. And they
Look at that game against Brazil. He beat Brazil by himself.
Yeah, I in the case of Beckenbauer, I got to see him play once. It was late when he was with the Cosmos, and he was sweeping, and somebody knocked the ball back to him. There was not an opponent within 20 yards, and he was just looking around. It's like, okay, where am I going to distribute the ball? And he ended up knocking it wide to the left to someone that also had 20 yards of space. But instead of flicking it up and backheeling it or chipping it or whatever, he turned and faced the guy and planted his foot and just hit an inside of the foot pass so that his knee came up to his elbow. And it was like, that's how you teach 9-year-olds. And Beckenbauer kind of had that approach that he did everything the right way. He was just a model on the field that would take your breath away with his simplicity. And then you go to the 70 World Cup and the idea of dislocating his shoulder, breaking his collarbone, whatever it was, and they tape him up and he goes back on the field. It's like, yeah, he's my captain. In the case of Zidane, obviously, France, oh my God, took them to the championship. And then 8 years later, took them 8 years, 12 years later. 8 years, I guess.
Yeah, right at the...
They had no business. France had no business in that cup, getting out of group stage. And that was, Frankie and I were talking on the phone regularly during that World Cup. And I remember him describing Zidane as being sublime. And honest to goodness, it was the first time in my life I felt I understood the word. You know, and academics throw that word around a lot. And it was like, I'm really not sure what it is. And he talked about, man, he's just so sublime. And it's like, yeah, he does stuff that you scratch your head and say, how did he think of that? Why did he do that? And they are the players that inspire me, that quite honestly, in my old age, bring tears to my eyes still. I can watch a Zidane or a Beckenbauer highlight tape on YouTube, and I have to catch my breath. It's like, oh my goodness. So those are my three, and I would put Zidane and Beckenbauer slightly above Messi, and maybe that is you got to win it for Argentina. I don't know. If I'm doing that, maybe that's unfair, but there's something about winning. And yeah, Beckenbauer and Zidane are the guys I go to the mat with.
Well, I was hoping at some point Beckenbauer would come up today, because if you didn't tell that story you told about Beckenbauer, I was going to tell the story about you telling that story many years ago, and I've remembered that story from you telling that at soccer camp and things like that.
Camp.
Yeah. So yeah, I was going to bring that up if the chance came today. Frankie, what do you say?
Yeah, see, you and I talked yesterday, and then
Frankie talked, and I told him I didn't want to hear anything because we were going to talk about it today.
Right. But it made me think even more about the question is so vague that you can go any direction with this question, and different players come to the top depending on how you structure the question. So for me, in a broad category, Johan Cruyff, Zidane, Messi, Pelé, and Maradona all kind of come to the top of the players that I would consider, all-time goal scoring. Gerd Muller, without question, is miles ahead. Puskas is probably right there in the same ballpark of games and goals scored.
Doesn't Pelé have the Guinness Book of World Records, or is that not anymore?
Yeah, but have you looked at what they're counting as his goals?
What are you
counting? Like, he's counting pickup games, and they
NASL.
NASL. I don't count any of that. I would count club, not friendlies, club and international competition. Those are the only things I would count towards a career or season of goals, not games that don't count.
But
yeah,
Frank, don't realize that, which I'm sure you guys realize that. Pelé was one of the greatest. Maradona was one of the greatest. But you have to understand the point that Pelé played great players.
That was what I was getting to.
Bava, Garrincha, and those kind of players, right? And I would rather put Maradona above Pelé as a better because he didn't have too many.
But
he had
not
great
the
players
quality.
to play with, but he didn't have those impact players that Pelé had. Now, if Maradona have had those,
he would
players
also have 3 World Cups
in his team.
No, he would have screwed up somehow. He would have screwed up somehow.
It would be amazing.
That was my thing with Maradona, and it's always been. It's like, oh my God, no one was better. He couldn't sustain it because there were these flare-ups, and you just scratch your head. We've had teammates like that, where it's just you never know what you're going to get, and that's my beef with Maradona.
Yeah.
When people critique Pelé, I put him in a separate category. You know that you have to really look hard for reasons. Not that they're not legitimate, but sometimes it's like, "Methink thou dost protest too much." It's like he sets the bar. You know, it's sort of like Gretzky in hockey. It's like, yeah, but he didn't. Yeah, but he didn't. It's like, no, dude, the guy's Pelé. If you want to, in particular, by Solomon's criteria in terms of impact, Pelé and Muhammad Ali are the two greatest athletes of the 20th century. Period. You know, they transcend sports.
Absolutely.
So we can leave Pelé aside, but we don't have to downgrade him to do so.
Absolutely.
Right.
No.
Sorry. Well, I started working on a spreadsheet of all of these championships and honors and awards, and there were about 20 players that I went through, and then the more that I started putting all this down, the more it didn't mean anything. A lot of these things just were they were so obscure, and it's being counted as this thing that makes this player great, that I don't think any stats,
Frankie, hold on,
count.
So what
Johnny,
about the people?
Wait a minute.
Johnny,
let Solly finish.
Johnny, you didn't pick some of the players.
I was going to wait till the very end and give the correct choices, but let you guys discuss. No, for me, Pelé and Maradona are my top two. That's where it starts and ends. Pelé, I didn't see him play in his prime and that kind of stuff. I had posters of him on my wall growing up. I wore number 10 from the time I was 7 years old because of Pelé. So,
your license plate was Pelé.
My license plate was Pelé 10 for many years. So, and then, 58, 62, had he not been injured, he would have won 4 World Cups in a row. But Maradona, why I have him there, Maradona won a World Cup by himself. There was nobody to speak of on that Argentina team in '86. And then
they did have some above-average players, but he did pretty much carry the team on his shoulder, especially in that England game.
It was him and God.
Beat the entire team.
It was him and God.
Hey, Steve, that wasn't
his choice. He was chosen. That wasn't his choice. But
hey, Steve, if you could leave and come back real quick. Oh, there you are. Okay, never mind.
No, it's Johnny.
It says it's still recording up there a minute ago, Frankie.
Yeah,
Johnny.
And then Diego, he went at the time. What was the top league in the world? Professional league, Serie A. He went and won the Serie A by himself there, pretty much.
And that's a very defensive league as well.
2 years in a row.
But what do you say to the people that say they can't be in the discussion if they haven't won a World Cup? They have to have won a World Cup to be in my best player ever.
I discount that completely, because this is the best player of all time, not the best team of all time. It takes a team of players to win a World Cup. And
Maradona had no team.
Yes, it does. Yeah, he did. He did. He was. You look at the players that Messi has around him, and then you look at the players that Maradona had around him, and Maradona was surrounded by much higher quality players.
Nah, I don't know. It's tomato. I mean, the level, why they're better, the level since Diego Maradona played is much higher now because of the way the players train. The pace is much faster.
Yeah.
The quality is much better. So everything. So that way. But I don't think for that era, I really don't think that. I think they were equals players at that stage, the same level. They were quality
That's
players.
another thing is
that
across
Maradona
generational gaps, the style of play is completely different. And, I look at it, I actually pick Johan Cruyff because he came at a time where they totally reinvented the way the game was played with Rinus Mikkel's idea of total football.
The total.
And he was the linchpin of this style of play that Mikkels looked at his players and went, our best style, we have everybody in the team can play anywhere. And, it had already been done in the 40s and 50s with, Hungary did it. There were a couple other teams that had used that.
You were
idea.
at some of those games, weren't you, Frankie?
I actually, no, I didn't see Cruyff play, but I saw Gerd Muller.
No, I'm talking about
Bayern
Hungary in the
Munich.
40s and 50s.
Oh, well, that was when I had retired and I was just traveling.
Probably.
So I was.
Probably.
But for me, his ability, and much like Zidane, where he made the game absolutely a beautiful thing to watch. And his ability to come up with, he never thought about how do I beat someone. He just beat someone, using his pace, using just anything to get past the defender. And he played in such a beautifully creative way. When they lost to Germany in that World Cup final, they were winning the game. They scored first.
Yeah.
And Beckenbauer even said, that when the Dutch scored first, they kind of took their foot off the gas. If they had continued playing the way they did in the build-up to that goal, Germany would have had no chance in that game.
All right. Frankie is a little bit long-winded.
I don't know what you're talking
Steve,
about.
Well,
it's your turn.
so here, let me. So two of you in your little top list breakdowns have Zidane in there, and maybe it's because my affinity for the Italians and I don't like the French.
You've got Buffon. You've got Buffon at the top of your list.
So okay. So we throw out the argument winning a World Cup doesn't matter for best player in the world. What about being the best player from your country ever? You put Zidane above Platini and what Platini did for France.
I do.
Yep.
Platini put France
question.
on the map. Platini put France on the map.
Yeah.
82 World Cup, they were very good. 84, they won the European Championship, and they were the best team. And then 86, they made a deep run again. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and Zidane turned them into soul crushers.
Yeah. I think that what Zinedine Zidane brought is a flair and the way he plays.
Effortless.
The things that he does. What's his name? Platini. He did well for the country. There's no doubt about that. He's a very, very good player. But I think Zidane brought something extra.
Yeah.
Something extra that the French needed. I mean, the French players at that point, they didn't have anybody.
Zidane was actually physically fit.
And
Platini was a little Pillsbury doughboy.
Well,
Platini.
You can't say that.
I just like saying
I disagree.
that.
I disagree.
For me, honestly, Platini's involvement with FIFA
Go ahead, Steve.
takes a little shine off the apple.
That's sour.
I can't separate it all. Part of it, soccer does not lend itself to statistics. Back to how many goals did Pelé score? And it sounds corny, and I'm not going to go down this road, but there is an element of ballet. There are style points. It's how the person plays. And I would not pick, the best ballerina with any more ease than I would pick the best soccer player. There's something about a personal appeal. So even with mine, it was like I thought about this, and it's like, well, yeah, I figured out who I was going to say, and it's like I have no arguments. I don't expect everybody to agree with me. It's like that style of play. So I expected Johnny to pick some, outside back from Italy '86 or something.
Maldini.
And he was on the short list, wasn't he?
Yeah.
You and Furlan. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like Buffon. But then you go to there's a goalkeeper, a soccer player.
Well,
but when you win the Ballon d'Or as a goalkeeper,
what's the name again?
I almost said balloon. No, I did say balloon. It's like the balloon. It's like Christian Dior, and the Balloon Dior.
So interesting. Real quick, let me jump back in, and then Sally, I know you're wanting to jump back in, but interesting that none of us said Cristiano Ronaldo in there in anything.
No.
And
no.
And the when Steve's talking about statistics and the youth of today, the younger generations, the video game generations, where they can see a player's speed and agility and whatever, and the FIFA soccer games, the video games, you can't go throw all these players into the video game and let it play out. And that's the best player like that, So
Yeah.
I loved what Steve said a while ago, playing with style, and I want to come back. Why? You can disagree with me. That's fine. Why? I know you will, especially Frankie. But Steve understands this. Why I chose George Best. That's what you said. Playing with flair. He came in and he had something that was different at that era. And that's why I think a lot of people put him a little bit on the side. I think he was a tremendous player. He brought something. And that's why I like him, because he plays with flair. And they were something new at that time. And that's why I have him in one of my three. It's a shame that, like a lot of players, have a little bit of problem with different things, but I definitely hold him very high. And personally, this is just personally, I'm really holding him up there. Like Steve said, he plays with flair, and he at that time he was like magic, something new to the game, and that's why I have him.
Do you remember that highlight?
That's what I wanted to say.
Highlight of him in the penalty box, where he basically dribbled the whole team multiple times before he actually scored the goal.
But that was using your standards.
I think that was when he played.
It was in ASL.
Yeah, it was San Jose, but it was it was amazing. It was like he was playing with. It was like playing with children.
One thing I'm going to mention.
Sorry, go ahead.
With Georgie Best and Cruyff was sort of the intersection of the game in the bigger context. I mean, George Best was to soccer what the Beatles were to rock and roll. And there was that, English flair. And in the same way,
the hair.
if the Dutch had not worn orange, and we couldn't have referred to Clockwork Orange, I don't know if they would have taken off the way they were. I mean, they represented sort of this counterculture, and he represented more than he actually was, and that's not a bad thing at all. I was caught up in that, and he is brilliant. But sometimes there are these intersections of what's going on in the world around, and Georgie Best just had a flair that it was like, man, he was like Joe Namath in terms of representing something going on. Let me throw out two names that I really struggled with, not including them, but I was trying to keep that list short. One, Eusebio. and just when
I was wondering.
Oh,
Yes.
man. And I still remember the 66 World Cup movie that came out, Goal. And he just put Portugal on his back. And I did actually get to see him late in his life career playing an indoor game. And I was just like, just give him the ball and let him do what he wants. No one could take, he had a big butt at that point, and people just couldn't get close to him. And the other
He was always a big body.
he was square. The other guy, and it kind of goes to, as I talked about, well, you got to win. And I understand you can't say World Cup because we have George Weah and many, many others. Clarence Seedorf is the only guy to play on 3 different clubs and win UEFA championships. And it's sort of like, I don't know what it was, but the fact of the matter is the cup followed him around. So even when I watch him play, his highlights aren't as fantastic over the top of any of the people that we've mentioned. And yet it's like, well, what if I give, you can have Georgie Best and you can have Messi and you can have Cruyff. I'll take Seedorf, and then we can randomly fill out the teams, and I'm not sure I wouldn't bet on myself, or I wouldn't bet on Seedorf because he has a track record. His team wins. He does whatever it takes somehow, and you got to honor that.
Yeah.
So just
he came from that Ajax team program. That was a golden generation for Ajax. And I would even take Jari Litmanen as an equal with Seedorf because Ajax used him everywhere.
Oh, no,
and as he got older, he moved further.
You might hey Frankie, you might as well take Ibrahimovic at that stage.
We're boycotting the Swedes.
Okay, no, that's fine.
No,
that's fine.
But
we've had a lot of
team that Seedorf came from was just an amazing group of players. They were amazing, and
that academy
and they all came out at the same time. Yeah,
Edgar David, Clarence Seedorf,
Edgar David.
I mean, there were a lot of those players that came out at the same time. Edgar Davids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And their kids now are playing.
It means that let me go back to what Frankie was saying about Johan Cruyff and the orange. I think at that time in '74, I think it is, when they started with the total football, the interchanging of places. When the right back went, the midfielder took the place, and so on. I think that's where it started a new way of looking at football or soccer at that stage. Before we were playing with stopper sweeper because
nobody wanted to be overrun
for the forwards at that stage. Right. But nowadays, if you see the game, which I'm sure Steve Parker is doing and watching the games nowadays, is that you are playing, whether it's a back 4 or back 3, that I think that came out from 74. Now, is it difficult? It's difficult to say that the Dutch brought the game forward at that stage, but I think they were part of it. That the football took leaps and beyond. Hey, if I'm playing right back, I don't have to be on the right hand side the whole time.
Well, Cruyff not only did he take it,
and that's
not only did he take it to the Dutch, but when he went to Barcelona, he took it to Spain, and then the Barcelona academy adopted his style, and then the tiki-taka. And those players, and Messi came from that academy. And then Spain actually wins the World Cup basically from playing Cruyff's style of play. So not only did he impact the game as a player, but as a coach, he completely changed the way the game was managed. When you look at apprentices that came out from him, with Guardiola and Iniesta, I forgot, Xavi. Xavi's going to be the next great coach that came from Guardiola, and all those philosophies go back to Cruyff.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
So do this.
Johnny.
Take Diego Maradona and give him the protection that Messi's had now. What does that do?
Well, then he doesn't have to dribble as much, and we talk about how he was such a great dribbler, but he also had incredible vision, and he could kill you with one pass. And if he had time, and he did that, he dribbled the entire English team, but then in the same game, with one touch from midfield, he put two players through on goal who I know one of them scored.
Now we're talking, but Frankie, we're talking about abilities right now.
Well, that's another ability.
What I'm saying is, if you put these players around Maradona, what he would do, I think it's a very difficult question because his personality is so
volatile.
different. So I don't know.
Well,
I don't know. His personality is different, but I think that he would do. If he played in this era, who knows what records he would have done or not? We don't know.
Yeah.
That. So I think with the protection that he would have, I agree with you that it would be a different game for him. He would have to change at that stage. To some sense, he would have had it a little bit easier. But on the other hand, we don't know because the soccer are going forward. You don't defend the way you did in the 80s. You defend a little bit differently now. So it's a very hard question to answer.
Although it might be easier in soccer than any other major sport in terms of across eras. Football is so different. Basketball it went above the rim and a bunch of other things. Even baseball, the idea of pitch counts and whatnot, it's entirely different. Soccer has maintained more of its core so that we can look at the specific. I still see 2-on-2s with the center backs and two strikers, and it drives me crazy because I am stuck in, I want an extra defender, and I guess that's sending a message that I don't trust my two defenders. But man, that it's like, wait a minute, I don't want to discourage attacking soccer, but it's like, where's the sweeper? Where's the cannon bolt? So that the one thing that's remained consistent.
Where is his cover?
Exactly. Soccer's always been a game of decision making, and that requires vision. It requires technical skill. So it doesn't do any good to see it if you can't physically put the ball where you want it to be. And I think something consistent across all of the players that all of us have mentioned is they made great decisions. Now again, their physical skills were such they always had more options than I had. But nonetheless, and that goes to the core of Zidane and Sublime, where it's like he's making decisions, and I'd like to give myself a little bit of credit. If I brought anything to the field, it was like, okay, I'm pretty good at knowing what's going on. And he would do stuff, and it was like after the fact, it was like, oh, I hadn't realized that, or I never thought of that one. What the hell? Or maybe that's just one aspect of the game that I've chosen to focus on because I can do so with a little pride. So maybe I'm overemphasizing it, but I told kids for decades, soccer is about decision making. You make decisions over and over and over and over. What are you going to do with the ball? Yeah. What are you going to do off the ball? and the team that makes the best decisions is going to win more times than not. The game has changed so that we see more possibilities, but there's always that element of am I going to do A, B, C, or D? Or in Zidane's case, Q, R, V, W, X, Y, Z.
X, Y.
Yeah.
That penalty kick that he took, the audacity to chip so lackadaisically and just off the underside of the crossbar was just, and in that much pressure to play, to decide to take that penalty kick. Wow. That was amazing for me.
So
I am.
I was going to ask. So,
Go ahead.
Sally, you grew up in Europe. When you were growing up and playing, was there more emphasis for what you saw and heard about on European players or South American players, or it didn't matter?
I think it's like everywhere else. It was more about the European players. But even though we heard about this new wonder kid from Argentina by the name of Diego Maradona at that stage, so these were something new, spectacular player that changed. He was a short kid. He had power. He had speed. He had something that was a little bit different, and that's what we heard of him. But here in Europe, it was like Steve said, a player that plays that. In soccer, you have to play simple, and it's probably the hardest thing to do. And Beckenbauer did that. I mean, he was as good of a player as anybody at that stage. So I have no argument about that. And what happens is when these players come through, like Maradona, Messi, and those kind of players, it brings a different dimension to the game. But in the end of the day, you still have to play simple. So Beckenbauer took that to a different level. That's why he was one of the greatest at that stage. So I don't disagree with that. But soccer comes. Soccer is that it goes forward the whole time. It's new things that's coming, and they did that with Maradona, and now with Messi. And when Messi's era is gone, there's going to be somebody else that will come and take over that mantle that we think, oh wow, that's it.
Let me ask you guys this: the guy that was omitted everywhere that I brought up earlier, not that I think he should be on the list. He has won everywhere he's been club-wise with big trophies and things, and other than a World Cup. So why does Cristiano Ronaldo not get into even like somebody that went down 5 deep or something like that?
I just don't like him.
And if you don't, as a fan, what do his teammates think of him? At some level, that matters. Whereas, like, again, with Beckenbauer, it's like, I know this dude has my back. I'm just, as great as he is, I'm not convinced he's got my back. You know, that he is.
Oh, yeah.
He wants to take it wide and beat a guy one-on-one and crack a ball. Great. But what about the rest of us? It's like with Ronaldo, of course he wants to win, and he does because of something he does. And I don't know if he can rely on his teammates the way these other guys do. When Sally said, about playing easy, not only did Beckenbauer play easy, I'm using the word too much here now, he allowed his teammates to play easy by providing them options. So those guys were better because when in doubt, get it to Franz, you know, and he always put himself in a position where he could. And Ronaldo is like,
Right.
okay, he's going to be nothing against him, but I agree with Frank. I just don't like him. And
I'll give you an example of why. I'll give you an example of why I don't like him,
well,
because
I think
they're
well, Frankie, I think that you guys are a little bit hard on this guy now. I mean, I'm a big Manchester United fan. I've always been that, but I agree that his attitude or his the way he hold himself, he doesn't have anybody to how do I say it, to lead him, to guide him. I mean, when he was playing, he had Scholes, he had Giggs, he had Roy
senior
Keane.
players with leadership.
I mean, he put them on. Yeah, he put them in his place.
For Real Madrid,
yeah. I think it's a little.
Let me interrupt 1 second.
Yeah. Hold on.
You finish your thought. No. Go finish your thought, and then.
Go ahead. No.
Okay. Well, the thing that really bothers me about Ronaldo is several games where he made a pass or he wasn't even involved in the play, and one of his teammates scored, and then you see the camera on Ronaldo, and he's livid. He's kicking the ground. He's gesturing wildly because he wasn't the one that scored. And that attitude just rubs me the wrong way. And I just don't like anybody that's like that.
But don't a lot of teams need a guy like that that's going to be selfish sometimes and
absolutely.
and go at the other guys every single time?
Yes.
The hardest thing to do as a coach,
demonstrate that.
Let me get this in. The hardest thing to deal with as a coach, putting up with a player's attitude that you don't like, but he brings worth to the team. And I'm pleading guilty. It's like, if you can score a goal every 90 minutes for me, I got to put you on the field. And damn it, you do so many things that drive me crazy and make steam come out of my ears and upset other people that it's like, it doesn't seem worth it. But it's like, well, if you can put the ball in the net every 90 minutes, maybe you do. And so in criticizing Ronaldo, a lot of it is, man, I wouldn't know how to deal with him. You know, you have to put up with it. Of course you will. You know, my God.
Yeah.
I think he's misunderstood in many ways.
Sure of it.
Why I say that he is misunderstood. No, but yeah, you have to look at the whole picture at that stage. I think he's misunderstood. I think that he had Alex Ferguson to keep him straight. He had when he went to Real Madrid, who did he have? Angelotti or something like that.
There were several.
So several, but he had players. Zidane. He had Zidane also. So I think he's misunderstood. But like Steve said, if you're gonna have a player that will win the game for you every time, then you have to be able to try to get to him somehow. You have to try to get through to him. But I think it's a lot. It's not good on the teammates and those kind of things. But maybe it's a little bit different in the dressing room.
But remember, this channel is a fan's perspective. So as a fan of the game,
but if I was playing with somebody like that,
I'm glad you brought in.
If I was
I'm glad you
playing with
brought in the
somebody
locker room stuff.
like that.
The one thing that put it over the top for me was I was in the Brazilian coaching school and got to talk to a bunch of those guys. And this was mid-late 90s. And we were talking, and it was
that was a Zico camp.
Yeah, Zico was there. I got to meet him. That was very cool. But we were talking with these guys, and it was like,
you went to Paraná, right?
Yeah, we were in Rio and went there for a couple of days. And the guy poked me and said, "Put your cleats in. We might be able to kick around with them." And it was like, holy crap, that didn't work out. But it was a very, very cool facility. But we were talking with these coaches, and somebody said something about Dunga. And they were like, Dunga's not one of the 500 best players in Brazil, but he's the only guy no one will get in his face. And what they they have Romario and they have the little Bebeto and those guys.
Bebeto, yeah.
We need Dunga just because they were going to have to face him in the locker room. And I don't want to overstate that, but it always stuck with me. So all these people, I don't think any of us would say, if we took each person's list, we have 11 players, they would not be the best 11 players to make up a team. We got too many guys doing the same thing.
Yes.
You need the Dunga. You need, this guy and this guy and this guy. And that's one of the beautiful and yet subtle things about soccer. They're all doing the same thing. And yet positionally, as well as just attitude and moxie and personal flair, you got to find that blend. It's like, who's going to do the dirty work? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? So, yeah, back to Clarence Seedorf. I have confidence in him. But, yeah.
Workhorse.
And I was going to bring up, as Steve went to Brazil there for a moment, I was going to bring up, who do everyone think the greatest country national team ever, the beautiful game, Brazil is always... they've won the most World Cups and things like that. And yet, really, until Steve just going down some other Brazilian players, the only Brazilian player we talked about was Pelé.
They have too many.
Yeah.
and part of it is there's a European bias in that's where we get the games from. I mean, that's where the money is. And I'm not dumping on Europe, although the extension of that is the Super League, which is absurd. But it's killing.
That's absurd. That will never happen. That will never happen.
Brazilian football, Argentine football, who plays in the Chilean league? It's like, no, the money's in Europe. You're going to go there if you're the greatest. Right. And in terms of publicizing the game, we're really hard pressed to talk about anybody. Any clubs are almost like historical references more than genuine. How are the Corinthians doing? What about Botafogo? And it's like, nobody knows that, and thus they'll never have the money to expand. And I know when I was in Brazil, it was right when I think it was Barcelona signed Denilson, and they were really worried because he was younger by 2 or 3 years than most of the Brazilian players Europe was signing. And it's like, man, if we can't even keep our guys past when they're 17, it's going to be tough to sustain a national program. It's going to be tough to sustain that pipeline. And we might be seeing that, quite honestly, in some of the struggles Brazil and Argentina have internationally. When your players are 10,000 miles away, it's tough to develop a system. So that's a little off track. Sorry. But
Neymar, they didn't want to let Neymar go for several years before he finally got lured to Europe, just because he was a big name for the local clubs.
It's money. Yeah.
So I don't think we've come to a consensus here. If there's people still watching at this point, they have no named best player in the world ever. But please throw out your comments, your suggestions. Please like and subscribe. There'll be other topics of the shows, and if we can get Dr. Parker to come back on and raise our intellectual level of the show again with us in the future, that would be very good. So first, let's stop things here. Let me say, please give us a thumbs up. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can see more of For the Love of the Game Soccer video podcast. The first episode, we had technical difficulties. We wouldn't want to disappoint you here on the second episode. You're going to see Steve drop out here in a minute as we had some issues with his audio and video at the end. So, yeah, we're learning. So we'll see what continues to happen as we move forward. But again, thanks for watching. Here we go.
We'll see how many likes we get. You don't want to commit yourself until you see the response. Yeah. But I'm always welcome to participate.
I don't.
It's great to talk soccer with you guys. It's great to see each of you. It's a thrill. I just last weekend went to a soccer reunion up in Indiana and saw people from 40 years ago forward, and it was a real thrill. To be truthful, and there was a surprising, a limited amount of war stories, and it really was just reveling in each other's company. And I've got the IU connections. You guys are my USM connections, and that was a real highlight. And somebody should have nominated Sally as the best in the world. I did think of a subcategory. Who's the best guy you ever played with? And Solomon, you're not one.
That's
only because I got to play with Armando Betancourt, a Honduran star, blah, blah, blah. But when I make up my list, you're always top three. Man.
Right.
And I can sort of say, I coached him.
Thank you.
It might have been for a week and a half.
That counts. That counts.
Thank you.
I think.
Thank you. We're going to continue.
I think
Go ahead.
One thing that soccer has done for us and does for a lot of kids that baseball, football, basketball don't do, it expands our horizons and outreach and what we're exposed to so much more with who we played with growing up and things like that. So there are definitely many different perspectives and just outlooks in general in dealing with people by playing soccer when we did, and I think that continues.
Yeah, it culturally exposes you to a lot of differences that you don't see in Mississippi or wherever your local area is until you play an international game like this.
How much taller was Maradona than you, Sally?
Well, I don't know.
He was what, 5'4", 5'5"?
Are we on the high
every
now?
episode, Sally? Every episode.
How many boxes? How many boxes are on Sally's couch? Count. Yes, go ahead and count.
Oh my God! All right.
There's a step stool. Step stool to get onto the couch.
So, Lala, you got any parting shots for your? So I wrote down you gave 3: Cruyff, Best, and Messi. Any parting shots, Lala?
No, I still, there are it's a very difficult questions. I just went with those 3 that I thought made an impact not only on me but on the game itself. And who is to say? It's who's to say who is the best right now? I believe that the discussion between Ronaldo and Messi. There is no comparison. Messi is, I believe, by far the best player. So it's such a difficult question to answer. But obviously, these questions and even the answers will go on for a long time. I believe.
I was gonna say,
Go
and
ahead.
when you started initially, I think bringing up influence, right? So that's a whole other direction,
Yes.
because then you got to talk, David Beckham and things like that for influence down the line when we get into some other discussions.
Yeah, yeah, but you influence the game that it went forward. The game went forward because of Johan Cruyff and the Dutch at '74, the World Cup, the way they were playing. I mean, you had Ari Hahn shooting from 50 yards on target.
Yeah, hitting the target.
So there were nobody. Yeah, I mean, there were nobody that did that. I mean, you had now I forgot the left back at that stage. He went up on the left hand side, and the midfielder slotted in and took his place. I mean, it's those kind of things.
Let me stop you there, Sully. We're gonna have to stop because we're about out of space here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Parting shot, Frankie.
Okay.
Then we'll let the guest give his.
Cruyff for me still. As far as influence on the game as a player and beyond, it's still, and has, just my personal opinion, he's been the player of all time for me.
All right. Oh, Captain, my captain.
We can do that now. I can actually, if you request it, I can put it in. Yep.
Love it. Yes. Buffon.
Maldini. That was the best.
He did his job.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
So
Love it.
yeah.
Love it.
Thanks, boys. Enjoyed it. And then everybody out there again, like, subscribe, comment, share the video, call us names, do what you will.
Have at it. All right,
Thank you, guys.
Till next time. All
Later,
right.
boys.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.